Welcome to the first 2024 edition of Sharing Sox. We've been one for a long time. I'm Southside Sox duty geezer Leigh Allan, and with me, my son and West Coast correspondent Will, as we take a look at a few things. But before we get to anything else, we're recording this on Monday, the 22nd. The 23rd is the deadline for Hall of Fame votes. So I'm wearing my Mark Buehrle shirt. Now, he's not going into the Hall of Fame, but yeah, there's my Buehrle shirt.
There it is. There it is.
But he needs to get above the 5% mark to stay on the ballot for another year. It looks like he's going to make it. He's like within a few votes at this point already, so he should make it and stay. But I mean, I'm just saying, yes, I'm a White Sox fan. Yes, Mark Buehrle is one of my favorite White Sox players ever. People who don't vote for Mark Buehrle, which is obviously 95%, don't really dig baseball. Because it's not just stats with him, even though his WAR is higher than I think 20 pitches were in the hall. They don't understand the other factors that he brought to the game, and it's not going to
Well,
get him in. Veterans Committee might, when he gets to where the players vote, he might.
I think they do understand. I think they don't care about those factors. Is really
Maybe.
what it is. I mean, to say that they don't, like they know. They've watched him, but I definitely think it's not a flashy choice. He was not a flashy guy. Guys like that who have these really solid long careers, including like WAR that is better than some guys in the hall. They just don't care. And you're coming from the White Sox, a team that isn't sexy to to like at the current time. I He's never getting in from these voters. He's absolutely not getting in. I think he might get the 5%. He should get the 5% to stay on the ballot. But it's 5% on a long journey to nowhere. But I do think you're right that he could end up in the Hall of Fame. I definitely think that when it comes to the the player vote and that situation, I think he could end up there. A lot of these guys faced him. A lot of these guys know what he brought to the game, know how crucially important he was to the organization for years and years and years and years. Obviously, the White Sox have already retired the number, and
Was that the game where it happened?
we were
We
there. It
were
was
there.
very 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 cool. But I just there's no way he's getting in. It's just not the kind of guy that they're going to go for. And hopefully he is in there someday. I do think he deserves to be there. I mean, when you're talking about, especially now when pitchers moving forward, I mean, the idea of a guy who's going to pitch for like 20 years is pretty much gone, with the way guys throw now and how many of them require Tommy John surgery. Could all change if Yoshinobu Yamamoto shows us that you don't have to lift weights and can just use flexibility to be a pitcher and not focus
Well,
on the
that's an
elbow.
interesting thing. That's going to be fun to watch.
It is the thing I
There,
am
there,
most excited for in
there,
2024.
there is historically been a lot of people on the chiropractic side, the straight medical side, where we're saying baseball players have bulked up too much.
Yeah.
They don't need it, and they've just loaded on all this muscle. We were that one game where we were sitting in the front row by the dugouts. We would watch every guy come up to bat. Jose Abreu's got arms bigger than a middle linebacker's legs. Jose can carry it, but not all those guys can do that.
Right.
Uh,
There are a lot of positions where I think it's totally fine to be bulked up. I mean, DH, playing first base, which is the definition of Jose Abreu. Um, but yeah, we're seeing way too much bulk around the league. I mean, the idea that these left fielders and center fielders and outfielders are huge. Shortstops being bulked is never been advantageous to that position. Uh, I'm going to be really interested to see how this goes with Yamamoto, and I don't know if you've gotten a chance to watch any of his
I haven't.
workouts. His routine, you can find videos on the internet. So it's all flexibility based. It's all about the flow of the body. I personally think it's the most beautiful pitching delivery I've ever seen in my life. The guy throws javelin to warm up in lieu of baseballs because the motion from javelin requires that full body flexibility and release and doesn't depend on the elbow. I can tell you this, if Yamamoto can actually pitch for 12 years in Major League Baseball effectively, even if we get to year 6, every high school kid in America is going to be learning the Yamamoto way of pitching because it really could change the game in terms of health and arm safety. Um, it's there's a ton of yoga involved. There's a ton of what looks to be like a kind of Tai Chi involved. And then the fact that he throws all sorts of things except baseballs. I mean, he obviously throws baseballs when he's doing a bullpen and stuff like that, but his training is based around throwing things that aren't baseballs. And that's going to be really fascinating. I'm at Dodger Stadium a lot. I'm excited to see the javelin flying across the outfield at Dodger Stadium. I mean, that's going to be an unbelievable thing to see. You know who I don't think is going to be excited for that?
Whoever the javelin ends up in.
Well, not only that, we were talking about, when the first person gets impaled. I think the head groundskeeper is going to
dig those holes
when the javelin starts going 2 feet into the ground in center field. I think the head groundskeeper is going to say, maybe we can cool it on the javelin throwing on the field. But I think it could be a really, really interesting thing for baseball if Yamamoto is successful. Now, we have no idea right now if he's going to be successful. He's on a 12-year, $325 million deal, and we have no clue if he can pitch in Major League Baseball. Obviously, he's coming off being...
We got clues. We have no proof.
Well, you got clue enough to offer him 12 years and 325. He's obviously coming off, I think, 3 straight years of being the MVP of Japanese baseball. So the guy is obviously incredibly talented and incredibly good at pitching. That being said, Major League Baseball is different. It is different. You are facing guys at a level you have not faced before. I have I'm on the upside of Yamamoto. I think he's going to be really, really special. And I think if he can be really, really special with this no weight training technique and all these new ways of preparing that we haven't seen in the US, I think it could change the game in a really, really good way. That's going to keep kids' arms healthier longer because the trend of everybody hit. The trend right now is everybody gets a Tommy John. Is essentially, you hope you don't get 2. But the trend right now is you're getting 1, and let's hope you don't need the second one later. But of course, when you get 1 and then you come back and still try to throw 101 miles per hour every pitch, you're probably going to get the second one. We have very little proof that people can really succeed after 2 Tommy Johns. You've got a couple guys who've managed to be fine. Including a guy we had last year and then Nathan Eovaldi. But we have not had anyone who's come back from 2 and been better than they were before they got the 1. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And I think Yamamoto could potentially open up a new era in the way pitchers prepare. And I would love to see that personally. I would love to see it.
Before we leave this, which we should, but on the second Tommy John, and I was reading as much as I could understand the medical parts, but the actual doctors who do this stuff saying, yes, you can pitch after a second one. They're not nearly as successful as after the first. After the first, almost everybody's fine. Not nearly as much, but still about a 60% make it back to the majors rate. You just don't last very long because they've created that hole to put the ligament through when they did the first one. And when that has buildup of scar tissue, even your bones, I guess, get scar tissue. As a consequence, when they can't put another one in because now they're weakening the bone too much. So they have to go through that same place and deal with the scar tissue. And he said it's just a much, much more difficult surgery that is not inclined to last. And I think the average major leaguer comes back up for number two, lasts about 7 or 8 innings
Yeah, I
rather than
mean,
5 or 10
the
years.
in layman's terms, it's kind of like the first time what you do is you fix it with duct tape, but really good duct tape. And then the second time, you're taping weaker duct tape onto that duct tape instead of onto the thing that you attached the duct tape to originally. So you can kind of get an image in your head of tape being stuck into more tape and how that would not hold over time. There's just too much that could go wrong there, pulling things apart. So it's extremely difficult to be back to where you were before, even your first Tommy John surgery after you've had the second one. But let's talk about the White Sox.
Let's talk about the 78. The 78.
78.
Supposed to be the 78th neighborhood of Chicago.
Is that where the name comes from?
That's where the name comes from. I'm sure everybody who's listening to this has heard of what's going on, a proposed new stadium that would be in an area kind of on the south end of the South Loop. Not that big an area, which is going to be interesting because I think there's more parking lot area already at the Gurf that this could possibly take. It's only a 62-acre plot, and
That's very small.
They've already given part of it to UIC for a lab. So, and the other artist renditions are great, but artist renditions of any construction project, it could be a maximum security prison, and it would look like a luxury resort when you do the artist rendition. But they look nice. They've had these meetings. The governor's saying, we're not putting any money into a stadium, but of course, they're already paying, and will keep being playing because it was such an incredible ripoff of the people of Illinois when they created the Sports Facility Authority. But we'll do infrastructure, which on an old rail yard, who knows how much infrastructure, what environmental damage is down underneath it. There's got to be a reason that, the company that owns this, the related companies, Related Midwest, this is a huge real estate operation. Huge. The guy who's in charge worth $10.5 billion, according to Forbes. That's Jerry Reinsdorf pray at his altar. And yet they've not been able to sell anything. They've owned it for quite a while. So there are problems that people, because the South Loop is very prosperous now.
Yeah,
it is. Just in the time you lived here and the time we've lived here,
completely changed.
It was just kind of a whole empty area in general, just some little low rises, a few, I think, individual houses, and now it's just one humongous high rise after another. And a lot of this goes, well, the South Loop needs this. The South Loop, they'll get restaurants and bars and whatever. South Loop doesn't need it. South Loop is doing just fine.
Yeah, but it could theoretically,
cool, do they do a cool stadium, which they could have done last time, except Reinsdorf decided, no, that looks like people would have too much fun going there. It's interesting because nothing has come out about what the money would be, and what's going to happen is that Reinsdorf, and I know, anybody who pays any attention to Reinsdorf is going to take every nickel from the people of Illinois that they're willing to give him. And while the governor has been nicely reticent, mostly the mayor is going to, we want to have an arrangement where we can have a competitive team for years to come. We don't have a competitive team now. We haven't had a competitive team for ages. I don't know what he's mayor of. I don't know what city he thinks he's in.
Well, I do appreciate a mayor acting like there's a second team.
Well, that's nice. Well, it's a mayor from the South Side, to be fair. So
exactly.
Then a lot of the people are very close. Oh, look at this. This would be wonderful to have all this development. But look at what happened to Wrigley. And at Wrigley, I can't stand the people who own the Cubs. But the fact is, that's virtually all their own money. There may have been a little infrastructure in there, but not much. They went to the table. They asked for hundreds of millions. They didn't get it, and they built it, and they're doing just fine. Reinsdorf won't do it. guarantee you he won't do it.
I can tell you this: Reinsdorf's first proposal is going to ask for volunteers to build it. Like he is going to go about this in the worst possible way. Their lease with guaranteed rate is up in
5 years.
2029, right?
Yeah,
So
they've got five more seasons.
they've only got 5 years to get this done. I mean, think about that. Think about how horribly run this organization is. And I'm looking at you, Jerry. And you're talking about 5 years between something where we have not even really started the process of making this happen into building a state of the art new stadium and being ready to play in 2029. That it sounds like a long timeline. It's really a very short timeline.
No, for that kind of construction on a place that has no infrastructure. I mean, just
exactly,
none.
exactly.
And again, the environmental possibilities there of a rail yard, the dumping that probably went on there for a century.
Yeah.
I mean, it's strange. And yeah, a lot of people are like, oh boy, they're going to have all these things, all these restaurants. Well, and look what what the development of Wrigley Field did to Wrigley Field. I hate to break it to you, but Wrigleyville was real well developed before the current owners even got there. We lived there. We know we have hundreds of restaurants, and mostly what you got is bars. Now the Cubs did put in some nice restaurants in their property that's across the street, across Clark, but most of that was there, and it's mostly bars. And that's fine. I'm not against anybody going to a bar, but having a bunch of bars is not really a way to improve your neighborhood. As you and I know, I walked through the piles of puke to get to work.
And the South Loop's not hurting for bars already. So
no.
You're just adding bars to where there's already a bunch of bars.
South Loop is doing fine.
Which is fine. All that aside, I just don't know how they can get this stadium negotiated and built safely by 2029 on a property with zero infrastructure. It just doesn't make sense to me unless you want to spend double what the project would cost to get it done in an expedited fashion. I don't know. I don't see that. Then you have to add the fact that realtors come up with new neighborhoods in Chicago all the time. So by the time this thing actually gets built, the 78 is going to be like the 84. So
there's 77 official neighborhoods. This isn't going to become an official neighborhood. It's going to be part of South Loop, but they like that idea. But the whole new company, that's their advertising plug, and that's fine. You're welcome to whatever advertising plug you want to do. I mean, I have doubts that anything Jerry Reinsdorf is involved with, I have doubts. It would be nice. I think it would be very nice. I hope the artist rendition is perfect, and that would work. But anything
the artist rendition will be perfect.
Yeah, it's going to involve ripping off other people, because that's what Jerry Reinsdorf does, and he doesn't give a crap about the people of Chicago or crap about the people of Illinois. He made one statement once years and years ago, like owning a baseball team is like a civic responsibility. I forget the words. It wasn't that, but the essence was, you're not just there for business. You're there as part of. Has he acted like that ever since? Never. No,
not at all. Not at all. That's a joke. So what's your, if you had to give a percentage of you thinking that this happens, if the 78 White Sox Stadium happens by 2029, what's your percentage of likelihood?
Less than 50-50. Because I think there will be a bulk. I think if he goes, he's going to demand hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And, pro sports owners all across the country are demanding that kind of thing and often getting it. Look what's happening in Las Vegas. They can, geez, Buffalo, 1.2 billion, putting into a new Bills stadium. But there's a difference. Chicago, if they lost the White Sox, and I'm a White Sox fan, I've been for a very long time, I hate to lose them. If they lost them, it's still Chicago. We have so much, we're world class in so many feelings of the arts and of business and of architecture.
And
museums, and
sports.
so on and so
Yeah.
on. And sports, if they go, we'll bring in another team. And they can maybe move into the 78.
Right.
uh, Buffalo, on the other hand, Buffalo loses the Bills. What's Buffalo? I mean, frankly,
Yeah. I mean,
it's
that's
just
a
like the
huge hit
number.
to their it's a huge hit to their economy. I mean, the White
Their
Sox aren't
their
propping up
their their
Chicago's
their
economy.
community image is takes a severe blow. There is no severe blow in Chicago. I mean, lost, even if you say, well, the Cubs are the more favored team. If you lost the Cubs, it's not a blow to the community image, frankly. Little notch, but that's it.
But it's more of one. It's
Yeah,
more
it's
of
more
one.
of them. It's more of them.
Be, be,
And people, and the other thing is people when they're who seem to be real big in favor of this thing in South Dakota. Well, Wrigley brought up this neighborhood. No, it didn't. Wrigley didn't bring up this neighborhood at all. Wrigley was here for 100 years when the neighborhood was going to hell. The neighborhood was falling apart when I first ever went to a game there 50 some years ago. What brought up this neighborhood? Nobody in. None of these guys are going to mention. It was Boys Town.
right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
True.
happened. The gay community came here and it started to gentrify it. And then other gentrification came along. And I live here. It's a wonderful neighborhood now. But
Yeah.
it wasn't because of Wrigley. Wrigley helped.
No. I
But
mean,
it's
one of
not
my
because of it.
favorite things is when you talk to the real old school Cubs fans, the Cubs fans that I like, and they talk about how much of a nightmare it used to be
No,
around
they
Wrigley
used to
Field.
tell you don't park very far from Wrigley.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a totally, totally different place. Wrigley did not bring that about. No, 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 no. That is absurd to think. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go in a harsher direction. I'm going to say there is a 10% chance that this
Oh,
happens for the White
wow.
Sox. I think their little leak about we might go to Nashville is what got this thing rolling as we knew it was intended to do. And I think because of what Reinsdorf is going to want and because of the specific plot of land, which is not developed with infrastructure, and the fact that you're on a 5-year timeline to get this done, I think there's a 10% chance this happens. If it happens, great. I'd love to see it. I really would. I'd love to see the White Sox in a better scenario with better facilities that can help attract more fans and more people going to games. But I think there is a 10% chance that this happens. I have no clue what the alternative is, but I think there's a 10% chance that this specific project happens. It is just way too short of a timeline. And I would love to be proven wrong. I can tell you right now, I would love this for the White Sox. I'd love it for Chicago. I want it to happen, but I think it is almost certainly not going to happen.
But I want it to happen too. I mean, I think it'd be very nice. I think it'd be great. I don't want it to happen on the backs of the taxpayers of Illinois and Chicago. And even if they go
Correct.
and argue, well, it's the hotel, motel, restaurant tax thing that it says you're not actually paying it. Money is fungible. The
Yeah.
money from that hotel, motel tax can go to schools. It can go to police. It can go to repairing roads. It can go to all kinds of things. And
All of which
it
Chicago
should it
desperately
should
needs
be
money
going
for.
to
Yeah.
a billionaire and his buddies.
Yeah. Totally.
And I feel the same way about the Bears too. I mean, for that matter,
Totally. Totally. We do have to take our break here. We will come back and talk about the team,
the team.
whoever's on it. So we will be right back on Sharing Socks. Welcome back to Sharing Socks. We talked a little bit of a wider scope of baseball and pitching, and then we discussed the exciting prospects of the 78, of which I do not have high hopes of it happening. But let's talk about some of the guys. This has been a jaw-dropping Hollywood, names and lights. Get them on the marquee as soon as possible.
We got
Off
John
season.
Brebbia. Or is it Brebbia? I have no idea.
So part of my issue with the White Sox right now is we're signing guys where I don't actually know how to say their names. I'm Eric Fede, Fuda, no clue.
I'm going with feta, but like the cheese. But
Sure, great. That sounds good. So we got him. So that's
he's going to be one of our starters, probably our number 2 starter. A guy who has been a complete failure in Major League Baseball, but was incredibly successful in Korea. Now, is it just because he was pitching to Koreans, or theoretically he developed a new pitch and
We'll see.
revised one of his old ones? We'll see if that's what happened. And then
Uh,
Previa is a former closer. I mean, he's been really good. Why
yeah,
he came here, I have no idea. But first he had Tommy John, then he came back from that and he was fine. But then last year he had flexor strain, and when he came back from that, he was awful. And the White Sox relievers, potentially closer relievers who have been injured, and we pick him up out of the hospital ward. Uh, one who went out to Los Angeles afterward, uh, do not have a good record with rehabilitating these guys, and for good reason. They're hurt.
yeah, and the White Sox probably don't have a medical staff. They don't have baseball analytics, so I don't know why they'd have a medical staff. I think they're running bare bones as much as possible. One of the more interesting signings, I think, was Jeff Brickton on 2 years and $7 million. He's interesting, I think, mainly because I just made him up, and you weren't for sure if he was real or not.
Yeah, I was like, I don't remember this guy. You go down the bar, the for sale closeout aisle of relievers at Dollar General, and you never know what you end up. You just kind of toss it in your basket when you
But
get the check.
my little trick I just pulled is my perfect analogy for this offseason. I could have named five guys right now, and there would be people listening to this who would be like, "Oh, he does sound interesting." They're all made up. We don't know who any of these people are.
The ones that are real are basically all pitchers except for Nicky Lopez and Paul DeYoung,
yeah,
who presumably will be the second base shortstop combination.
yeah,
And they said they're going to improve the defense. That will incredibly improve the defense. The other things were the catchers that they got. I presume Martin Maldonado will end up being the starter, and he hits about 140. None of these guys can hit. Maldonado defensively fell apart last year. He had
yeah,
been one of the best defensive catchers in the game. But catchers get old. We
yeah.
all get old, but catchers really age fast.
I mean, a catcher
Uh,
who's been hitting 140 is a guy you need to plan on hitting 110. It's just,
yeah,
yeah,
and then
Maldonado's been around. He's been a
you,
solid ball player, but he's been around.
and Max Stassi, who hits the long ball occasionally, but he hits under 200 too. Uh, so
Guaranteed.
so so you're going to have three already set goals in the lineup at second, short, and catcher. You don't have a right fielder, so that's four holes. You have a great hitting and fielding center fielder. You
Yep.
have left fielders, third baseman, and first baseman who maybe they'll be slightly better than what their position average is, but probably not. And
Yeah,
in the
you
case of
never know who you're going to get. And when you're talking about a team that's absolutely not going to be competitive, you're probably not going to get their best stuff. I mean, let's be
no,
real.
and you've got Yuan is oft injured. This often does not look like he's interested in the game anymore. Probably because he is injured. If your back
Yeah.
hurt every time you went out there and you're a third baseman, which puts a lot of strain on your back, your enthusiasm is liable to be dimmed a little bit.
Especially when you're going out there and doing it for a 100 loss team. Like there's a huge difference between powering through that when you've got a team that can make a championship run and powering through that when you've got a team that's playing to, essentially have their season over in August or July or June. I don't even blame them. I mean, if you're hurt, you're hurt. And if you're going out there to play for a terrible team, what's the motivation? I mean, I know they're getting paid a lot of money. That's what's making them show up. But I think we're going to see virtually no improvement from those guys. They'll have good days and they'll have bad days like they always do. But I don't see a world where any of those guys are now bouncing back to what we thought they were going to be. Um, our championship window, which we're technically still in based on what everybody talked about in the early
We're
two.
kind of at the back end of it.
Early 20s. Yeah, we're on the back end. So we've already won 2 World Series, right? Um, it's completely closed. It's not only closed, but they've put 40 padlocks on the door and walked away. So I don't see a world where we see an uptick in production from any of these guys. I think Luis Robert is likely going to be great in an effort to maybe get the heck out of there.
I hope he can keep the effort up, because we saw in 2022 when he got disgusted that he's just kind of an average guy. And then for congratulations to him, last year, amidst that debacle, he got the spirit back. Hope he can do it again.
Yeah, me
meanwhile,
too.
the two Andrews, one I think has been overrated from day one, and the other one's on a fade because he got a big contract, so why not enjoy the money? And then pitching, our number one pitcher, they are asking apparently the moon for Dylan Cease, and not getting it. And
Yeah.
so he's looks now he's going to be around till the trade deadline. Something will happen. He'll go somewhere. I guess our number two is Eric Fetty. Then Michael
Oh,
Kopech. None of these guys, and I looked at as we were getting these pitchers, the big trade with Atlanta, where Bummer went, we got all these guys who were mostly pitchers. None of these guys averages over 5 innings, and that's the same thing with Dylan Cease. Cease, to his great credit, comes out every day. I mean, he almost
yeah.
never misses a start. He's incredible on that, but he also averages 5.5 innings a start. So you've got a non-existent bullpen that's going to have to cover all these incredible numbers of innings. I mean, it's unreal. The other thing on the trade front, the word in the last couple of days is nobody wants Eloy.
Yeah.
There was some early interest, but it's just not there anymore. They really screwed up when they didn't send him to Miami and sent Berger instead.
Yeah.
That apparently was a Kenny Williams total screw up, but because Miami was looking for Eloy originally, and they're very, very happy to get Jake instead.
I mean, if Eloy comes out and he can be healthy and he can hit the baseball, they're gonna get something for him by the deadline. But
Yeah,
those are big ifs, and I think when he's healthy and when he's happy, he can be a great hitter. But he's obviously useless in the field, so
and I think another question. Yes, he is useless in the field, so you're only talking to DH. And the second thing is, I think his reputation, and this comes from former teammates talking by and large, is that while he's a really nice guy, he's a great guy, and he's really happy, he just doesn't work very hard.
Yeah. Oh, you can see it. I mean, when you go to games before games, you can see it. And I've said that about the White Sox. I've seen virtually every team pre-game at some point in the last season or so, and you can see which teams are getting better and which teams are trying to get better and which teams are really working hard and which ones aren't. And the White Sox are definitely in the latter category. It's just so poorly run and so poorly managed from the top down that I think they don't have anyone there motivating anybody to work hard. And a guy like Eloy, who I think is a very nice guy, but he's also kind of a big kid, and I think he really
Hence his
needs.
nickname.
Exactly. And I think he really needs leadership and motivation. And I think with the right people doing that, he would work harder and be better. So you got to hope that he does that, because you really need somebody who's desperate for a DH to need Eloy by the trade deadline this year. I think Cease is definitely gone by the deadline. Let's hope that they don't have to settle for what they're going to get for him. Because honestly, we don't know which Dylan Cease we're going to get yet this year either.
There's a lot of debate. I mean, you read the stuff, that our side and other sites where commenters go back and forth about we really need to trade him now or we should hold on. And it's a legitimate debate, because if you hold on and he's great, if it's 2022 again, then yeah, you're going to get a nice package in July.
Especially at the deadline. Yeah.
Yeah. Even though there's only a year and a third of them left instead of 2 whole years. But if he's 2023 Dylan Cease, you get a pretty good package, but not that great. And if he gets injured, which he's
It's done.
avoided injuries, really weird for a pitcher to really great that he's avoided injury as long as he has. But if he were to get injured, then you've lost everything.
Yeah.
I'm kind of let's get what we can get. It makes the team even worse, obviously, for the 2024. But I think, don't grovel for a couple used baseball bats or something, but they seem to be holding out for like people's 3 top prospects. Well, they're not getting it.
No.
Probably not going to get that in July either.
There's very
So,
few guys where you would get that. And Dylan Cease has not proven that he is worth your future. When you're talking about wanting someone's top 3 prospects or wanting 2 of the 3 of the top 5 at least, you're leveraging your future on one guy. And a lot of teams, one, can't do that because of how baseball works. That rebuild periods are crucial for all mid-market teams and small market teams. You can't just give away your future on a guy that could come in and pitch to a 4.5 ERA and only give you 5 innings a game. I mean, nobody is going to be foaming at the mouth. A contender is not going to be foaming at the mouth to spend their farm on a potential number 3 or 4. If he comes out and proves himself an ace, you're gonna get something great. You're gonna get a good package. It's actually not unreasonable to think you could get, someone's top 2 prospects. However, if he's anything but that, you're gonna have to take a hit on this. And let's be real, the chances are he's going to be anything but that. And if he proves us wrong, amazing. One, that would give us something exciting to watch early in the season if Cease comes out and he's back to 2022 form. But let's be realistic about this, and there's a good chance that he won't be. I still think he's going to be good. Don't get me wrong. But
yeah,
but there's
he was good in 2023. He just wasn't excellent.
But there's a huge difference between a top 2 in the Cy Young and a guy who's good, and what you can get for those things, even at the trade deadline. People overspend at the deadline, of course, but you also, as you mentioned earlier, you get a sample before that time comes. And if that sample is not better than it was going into the season, you're not going to get more, even at the trade deadline. So he's as good as gone. I just don't know how much they're going to be able to get for him. I'm sure he is hoping to be gone. I'm sure everyone on the team is hoping to be gone. When I say that, I mean gone,
even the ones who just signed.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all playing for the deadline and hoping that they get shipped to one of the contenders, because they're not going to contend for a long time. And guys like Cease and Robert, who still have a lot to offer the game, age matters in baseball, matters in sports, and you got to really, really hope that you can get away from a dying franchise while you still have stuff left in the tank. So I do think these guys might step up a bit to try to go somewhere else. They're in no danger of stepping up so much that they make the White Sox a deadline contender, which is a nice place to be. So the White Sox can't fame the whole, "oh, we think we're still in it" thing at the end of July. But I think they're, we just got to hope that these guys come out and are gangbusters so we can get as much of a haul for them as we can. Because otherwise the White Sox future is so bleak.
One thing I want to get back, I know we're really over time here. I want to get this in. You and I have both, and so has everybody, every other Sox fan that come across, go, why are we getting all these people from Kansas City, from Pedro Grifol to people in the front office to players? Why are we getting everybody from one of the 4 teams in all of baseball that's worse than we are? Why are we doing this again? I wish to apologize to the people of Kansas City and to the Kansas City Royal franchise. because every prediction I have seen for 2024 has them better than the White Sox. So we have been wrong in disparaging it that way.
Okay, well, first off, we saw you had to have seen that coming. So we were consciously ignorant about this one because the Royals will definitely be better than the White Sox in 2024. And they have something to be excited about. They've got young guys that are exciting. And, you look at the way they're rebuilding, and there really is a future that you can build around Bobby Witt Jr. We are kind of past that point with our guys of we can build a future for Luis Robert. We can build a future for Robert and Cease. We really can't. I mean, we are so far removed from being competitive because our farm system has one guy in the top 100, and we'll see.
Sometimes two. So it depends on who's doing the rating. Noah Schultz comes in usually as well as Montgomery.
But if you're saying sometimes two, the second one is towards the back end of the 100. So, maybe Colson Montgomery is going to be good, but one guy isn't going to do it. So the future is very bleak. We are about out of time for this week, though. Do you have any final thoughts before we end the uplifting first podcast of 2024?
Well, I have no. The number 78 in the past was a very nice record on an old turntable. And I as a kid, my parents had some really nice 78s of people like Muddy Waters and Tom Laird. So 78 has a positive influence in my mind. 78 also has the negative influence that there's an old rule of 78 that auto dealerships use to kind of screw you on financing. It was some way like you couldn't ever pull off your loan because of this rule of 78s thing.
That sounds like the White Sox version of 78.
I don't think that's been around for a very long time, but that's a negative. So we have a balance, a positive and a negative, and so it's in the balance now. But this 78.
We'll see. We'll see which 78 we're gonna get. I'm leaning toward the used car dealership 78. Used car dealership is a very White Sox vibe right now. Actually, I think it's very good. We're gonna offer some fake things to get you into the ballpark just so we can make you spend $20 on a bad beer. It feels very used car dealership to me. That is all the time we have, though. So thank you so much for listening. We will be with you through this 2024 season of baseball, or a game that looks like baseball. And we'll talk to you soon right here on Sharing Sox.